Alright, so we're just looking at the peak end. What I've done to this point is measure 50 mils up here, 50 mils up here, and then run a line through to the start of the bird's mouth. That is because the fascia board is too narrow in its standard width, and it's really expensive. So I want to use the smallest one I can. Standard sort of width fascia board is 180 mil. This is 190, so I couldn't use 180 mil fascia on this as it stands. So basically what I'm going to have happen, this line here is going to be flush with the front of the building, so it'll look to all intents and purposes like the building has basically 140 rafters in it, if you could see the rafters end on, but the actual load bearing portion of the rafter from the outside of one top plate to the outside of the far top plate will still be that 190. One. So I'm pretty happy with that fit. Well, we had a bit of a storm come through, and the covers are back on, but they were all torn off. I'd hoped to have all this weathered in before winter really came back with a vengeance, but unfortunately I missed it. So Yeah, so this was the end that got blown off, the weather end. The floor is pretty well saturated, the framework's saturated. The new door, covered in water, Homer dry timber including the door jamb, completely unfinished, finger jointed pine. Purchased at great expense, ye gods. Soaking wet. It was all just pouring with rain on top of this. Surprisingly, it has actually dried a little, or appears to have dried a little, even though the covers have been on it all of yesterday. I didn't get a chance to come out here yesterday. The other end, the covers stayed on mostly, so I'm expecting it to still probably be reasonably dry under there, but this is not ideal. So I'll get these covers off and just let it sit for the morning. I'm going to go and pick up the roofing iron, which is come from the same place as this. I don't know if they manufacture it there or if he just stockpiles a lot of offcuts, but I can get 4 metre lengths of iron. So I've worked out that 4 metres of iron will get me pretty much from the peak down to, I think, 60 millimetres into the gutter, which is not something I planned. Other than that, I have put, as you will have seen, I put some blocking in under the rafters that sit in the middle of a top plate span. So there's 2 nails in from each end and 4 screws down from the top, just holding that blocking in place, just to add a wee bit extra support to those rafters. So I've done it everywhere where a rafter is sitting in the middle of a span. I don't know if that was necessary. I feel like it probably was. So I just felt like that was a safe thing to do. Alright, let's briefly talk about mistakes, because I've made a few. This one is one I need to correct now. Originally I wasn't worried about this, and the reason I wasn't worried is because, well, let's talk about what the problem is. The problem is that these bits of blocking I've put in extend above the height of the rafters, and they do that because the rafters actually notched to have the bird mouth to sit over the top plate. I could have put these through a table saw and trimmed them down to the same height as the rafters before I put them in, and in hindsight I probably should have, but I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because there are purlins to go across the topper here at 90 degrees to the rafters, which will add another 40 mil to the height and easily clear that. And then I was going to put the roof paper, or the roof synthetic underlay, over the top of that. But in talking to someone who knows more than I do, they suggested that the better approach is to actually put the building paper between the rafters and the purlins, because it'll sag this way, if it sags at all, between the rafters, and then the water will flow down, any water that gets on it, maybe from condensation under the iron that drips onto it will flow down and then out the end. With this blocking being higher than that, it can't. So that's not going to work. The other thing is, I have since decided to create a torsion box out of the roof, and to do that I basically need to sheet the top of the rafters in ply. So I'm going to use some structural ply, some reject grade structural ply. It will be fine. It's basically going to tie the roof together, keep it square, and just stiffen the whole structure up. So if I do that, it needs to sit flat on top of the rafters, and it can't do that because I need to plane down the blocking. So I bought myself a plane, and that's what I'm going to do. And there's a puppy. What are you doing? You shouldn't be out here. How did you get out? What are you doing? Yes, you. Oh dear. Alright, let's go put a puppy away. Little bugger. There's an hour of my life I'm not getting back. So anyway, I need to plane the top of this blocking. The blocking at the peak also needs a slight trim, but it's not as bad as the stuff down this low end. And once I get that sorted, then we'll get the blocking in the mid rows so that the insulation will fit neatly. Yeah, let's get this buzzed off. Oh yeah. Alright, it's going to take a wee bit of practice to get this completely right, but I'm not looking for perfect. That's what open cell foam in a can's for. Alright, so just a quick update. It is getting dark. It's Thursday. I don't know what the date is. It's a Thursday, I think. The weather forecast is that tomorrow it is absolutely pouring down with rain, and that starts tonight sometime. I've got the blocking in the main part of the ceiling. I've got the two end bays, which are narrower, still to do, so I'm going to quickly knock out those 4 bits of blocking and get them nailed in. Then I'm going to sheathe the roof in plywood. I want to get a membrane on the roof, and then hopefully tonight it'll be pitch black. None of this I'm going to be able to film because it's already starting to go dark. I just have to get it done. I'll get the building wrap on and then we'll be golden. So if I get some photos of what I do, I'll be showing them now, I guess, but otherwise the next time you see this, unfortunately, I'd love to film it and show you, but I do not have time before the weather is about to open up again, and I want to try and get this weathered in, sort of, at least, with ply on the roof and the roof membrane and then the building wrap on the outside of here, so that I have a closed in building that is somewhat waterproof, because I need to start getting the inside dried out. It is drenched from all the rain we've had. The floor is drenched. The framing is damp. The framing down on the floor is very wet. So I'm going to get all this closed in. I'm going to get the ply on the roof, and I'll get the paper on the roof, and then the building paper around the outside of the building, because that's pretty much where I'm at. There's still a wee bit of strapping to nail down. You may or may not be able to see bits of strapping poking out up there that I haven't actually wrapped over. They're nailed on the inside, but I haven't wrapped them over and nailed them on the outside, so I'll get that done as well. But just lots of little tidy up stuff. I want to get this ply up and get that part done, so that is my job for this evening. Anyway, I'll film if I can, but I don't know that there'll be much to see. Alright, so just a quick update. I have got some sheathing down. There's not much to see here. This is 7mm ply. It's not very rigid. I have geniusly not put it across the blocking, so it has joins like that one. It is a tad annoying. I could have done this better. Alright, quick update. With the light to see what we're doing. Not that you'll see much. I done screwed up. Those flippy floppy edges were not supposed to happen, and I was probably too tired to figure it out. So what you can't see is that I've basically lifted all the ply that I put down and started again making a proper torsion box, so the sheets actually fall nicely on the blocking. See if I can get enough light on it to show you that when I get done, and hopefully get that done before I finish up here tonight, because it is going to bucket down tomorrow according to the weather forecast, and then it is going to bucket down even worse on Saturday, and then Sunday will be a complete write-off because this place will be completely soaked. So let's see if we can get this sort of dried in. I am very lucky. What a lucky guy. Check this beautiful fillet steak sandwich out that's just appeared on the roof. It's going to be a long night, but at least I'll be well fed. I am well looked after. Thank you, Nikki. Another beautiful day in paradise. So, roof sheathing is on, and it is soaked. course it's thin ply. So it's also raining inside because I never got the roof paper on. So it's a bit of a disaster really. It's not what I was hoping for at all. But I'm going to climb up there in the rain and try and put the underlay on, because that seems like a fun thing to do in the rain. Well, that's it. Sort of covered. Man, oh man. Can you catch this roll of stuff?
Can I catch it? I don't know.
I'm rolling it directly towards you now, so it should just roll off the end of the roof. Just try not to get it dirty.
Okay.
Here it comes.
Oh, scary! Oh!
Right, done. So this is the inside disaster because it was raining straight through that ply, but it's stopped raining inside now, so we'll just let the rafters dry out a bit. We sort of got a roof. Woohoo. Okay, so next morning, and it's actually looking really dry in here. We've had no real rain. I think it might have spattered a little bit, but fairly constant winds, and it's not super cold. It is blowing southerly, so southerly winds are pretty bitter here, but it's not as cold as it could be, and it's pretty well drying out. At least on the surface it looks reasonably dry, so that's not bad. So happy with that. Mission today: move that dirt. So I'm going to I'll get the camera out and get set up. Whew, alright, well, that's this area cleared for the moment. I've got the ground sloping away again and fixed a couple of the high spots that were up against the building that were causing a wee bit of pooling on the polythene underneath the edge. So I've pulled it back probably 2.5 meters. I need about 1.2 for a deck. Can't really afford to build the deck on it at the moment, so it's not a huge issue for right now, but it's just something in the back of my mind as I'm designing this. The main thing I need to do now is get up and tie off all the straps and fit straps where I haven't fitted them. Once I've got that done, and on this main front face and around this side here, then I can actually start putting the building wrap on, which I'm kind of hanging out to do, because once I do that, this end of the building is no longer exposed to the southerlies and I can work in there in the dry. That's not a permanent solution. We do need to clad it. I'm still thinking about cladding. I'm still thinking about cavity battens. I spoke to Josh Chapman, NZ Builder. I'll leave a link to him. He's got some great videos, including a really scary one on roofs that made me rethink my roofing strategy. But he is a big fan of cavity battens. He actually suggested I do them even if the building matrix for weather tightness doesn't actually need them. When you do that weather tight matrix on this building, it comes in at a 6, and 6 or below does not require cavity battens, but he suggested I put them in anyway. I am really keen to do that, but I'm also very conscious of the cost at the moment. And I know that short-term pain and long-term gain and all that, but we really are just trying to rein in the costs a little bit on this runaway train of a building. I mean, it's not even a big building, it's just a sleepout, but it's anyway. If you've built one, you'll know. If you're going to build one, you'll find out. There's plenty of money to be made selling building stuff. Well, actually, I'm not sure who's making the money. Weirdly enough, New Zealand's, I think it's our second biggest industry is forestry, or it might be our second biggest export industry, something like that. And yet, the plywood, the cheapest plywood I could get, that was for bracing the roof, is made in Chile. So how is it we have so many trees and yet we import wood products that we make here from the other side of the world, and they're cheaper than the stuff we make here, even with all that shipping and carbon miles and the rest of it on top? That's a little bit confusing to me, and whilst I would love to support New Zealand industry, I cheaper is better at this point. If it meets a certain specification, then it will do the job. Anyway. Alright, so as you can see, we're wrapped. Next job I've got to do is get onto the roof and get some purlins up to hold that building paper down because it's getting a bit thrashed in the wind. I'll take you up there and show you my plans for how I'm going to weatherproof and put the tin on. Yeah, for the moment it's kind of weatherproof, which is a bit of a relief. So we'll have a look inside. So yeah, here we are. Kind of weathered in, everything's looking pretty dry in here, which is fantastic. It's got that lovely timbery smell, which may not be timber, it could be the chemicals in the timber, but whatever, it smells alright. And yeah, so at the moment I've just building papered over everything except the back door, which I needed to leave open to get inside. And so yeah, we're all strapped down, we're all closed in. But next step, we get up on the roof. Now, I am not super comfortable up here. Roofing guys will be laughing their tits off right now because this is a 9-degree roof. I've watched roofing guys walk up and down really steep roofs, and this is barely off flat. I get a funny feeling the street I used to walk up on my way to school was about 7 degrees when I was a kid, so a 9-degree roof is nothing really. But I'm 4 meters in the air, and I'm feeling a bit awkward, and I figure I'd rather feel awkward than feel super confident and do something stupid, so. Are you just going to stand there? Okay, bye now. Thanks for coming. Nikki came out to make sure I was still alive. A funny thing really, because I don't mind talking to the camera, although it's a little bit weird, but I don't feel super awkward doing that, but I feel super awkward when someone's watching me do it. Anyone else feel that way? Don't damage the building paper. Don't think I'd be a roofer. Alright, so made some progress. It's going to be a windy day and it's going to piss down at lunchtime. It's currently about 8 AM. The sun is just peeking its head up, so we need to get this done. Last night I managed to sheathe the front eaves of the building. I also managed to, and I've got that bit to do. But what I have learnt from doing this sheathing in 7mm ply is don't do sheathing in 7mm ply. It's too flimsy. I saw that it was bracing ply and figured it would be fine, but I should have used at least 12mm, I think. Well, it's been a while. I've lost a little bit of track, but I think it's been about 2 months and I've got nothing done. I got COVID, which I'd never had before, so 3.5 years I think I've managed to avoid it, and then it got me, and it got me good. I'm still struggling with energy. I'm very, very tired and lethargic. Just can't believe how much it's wiped me out. Actually, it's been pretty horrible. I vaguely recall the first 24 hours I was just vomiting constantly, couldn't do anything. And then the next 2 days I don't really remember, and then I just remember being tired and unwell. And now I'm just tired. And I'm still tired. 2 months later, I'm just knackered. I managed to do basically nothing in that time, so everything stopped, which luckily and unluckily I had the roof membrane on. The roof membrane has a 7-day UV life, so I've busted that by about 8 times, and I have noticed that there's a little bit of dampness on the underside of the plywood on the ceiling, and I'm starting to worry that the roof membrane is perhaps either breaking down or just naturally, we had so much rain. The week I had COVID, it was such beautiful weather and I could have got the whole roof finished, and it's rained so much since then. Virtually the day my 7 days were up and could go back to work, not that I was really up to it. It's been raining since then. It's pretty sunny today. I'm just trying to get the energy level up and the motivation up to actually get up there and have a look at it, because I am a bit worried. I did, and you may notice this, a drip edge which I have fitted incorrectly. I knew that the roofing iron needed to come out 50 to 60 mil over the top of the guttering, and in my brain fog that's the measurement I put on the eaves flashing, so it's sticking out way further than it should. Luckily it's only up there with a few nails. Luckily it's still up there. A couple of spots where I managed to bend it because it's pretty flippy floppy. But yeah, I need to get back onto that, and with what's left of today I want to start trying to put some iron up, but I need to check the roof membrane first and just see what kind of condition it's in, because if it has started to break down, the building paper still feels pretty good. It has torn off in a couple of places with the wind, but it's still protecting the outer skin of the building. I believe that's good for up to 6 months, so hopefully that's fine. I have got the shadow clad to go on the exterior walls. I've got the battens to go on here first. First things first, let's have a look at this membrane and see what condition it's in. Okay, so part of the problem was that this was folded up here, and as you can see it's absolutely sodden. It looks reasonably dry up there, but I'm guessing that the whole roof is just sopping wet. Yeah, I'm not even sure how we get this to dry out at this point. The only thing I can think of is to get the roofing iron on and let the heat on the dark iron, because it is iron sand coloured, let that slowly dry it out over time. I can't think of another method to do it. But this is absolutely sopping wet. It feels dry underneath, surprisingly dry on the bottom side of it. So I think it's just, it can only do so much. You know, it's there is moisture in the gaps. Alright, well, I need to get the few nails that I did put in. There's one here, and there's one further back along. I need to get those nails out and then push this back in towards the house a bit. I don't want to go too far in because I don't have the barge flashing on yet. Well, not fully on. Right, she's a new day. Alright, so the membrane's still pretty wet. I get a lot of standing water just pooling on it. As I've said many times, it's not a dry place. Had I to do it all again, well, that's dried out heaps. There's a bit of water staining, but that was just sopping wet. It's now not sopping wet, although you can see water underneath here. Yeah, if I had the opportunity to move this building, this is not where I would have built it. The one thing I am going to do is top these. So I'm going to take a fairly hefty chunk out of the top of these trees at some point. I'll trim them back. I just want to get more sun in here, and you can see the sun over there. Not a single part of the top of this roof has any direct sunlight on it. Nothing here does, and it's reasonably well directly attributable to the trees behind me here. So those trees, which I can barely see the top of here, are going to get topped out pretty hard, just to try and let a wee bit more light on here. Otherwise this whole building's going to live in damp, and that is no good. But I'm really happy with how this has started to dry out under here. It's still damp, and I don't know that I'm going to get it any drier than it is. I don't have any kind of fan or anything to run on it, so what I'm going to do is take these blocks out. It was damp under here, but it's nice and dry at this bit. So I'll take all those blocks of wood out, and I'm going to prepare for the last row of purlins and try and get some steel up here today. Alright, so all the purlins are covered. We get the first sheet of iron up. 6/8/28. So within 2mm, just where I dropped it. Neighbour's flying his helicopter. This roof is actually feeling quite dry. None of the condensation that's been on it in the previous few days. This shows a few dry days have really helped. This feels great. I feel confident in the roof drying out now. I've had a look at the Metal Roofing Institute Code of Practice, and so you can see some pictures here that I've taken from their Code of Practice to show our particular situation, high wind zone. In terms of the screw pattern, it seems to be miss 1, miss 2 is the higher of the two specs that I could use for this particular location. That's the one I'm going to use, just cause. I'm starting at this end because then the next sheet will lap over this one. The weather comes straight this way towards me, so that way the water is being blown off one sheet onto another rather than under the lap. Over there, so that needs turned up as well. So Started to pick up wind earlier and I thought we were screwed. Then the wind went away. Well, it's up. Time. Alright, screwing's done. I'm knackered. Time to go inside. And this might be the end of this video. I have to order the flashings, so I've got to actually do some research and figure out exactly what I need there. I'll have to take some measurements. So it's got to come up the side here and then come across, I think, a couple of ribs and then go down, so I'll have to do some measurements to here. It'll be different from the other end. And then the head flashing, I guess they just need to know the angle. 9 degrees.